Welcome back to Module 3 in Quiet Power. Today we're talking about staying grounded in your power, how to lead with unshakable certainty even when the room is quiet. Thus far on your Quiet Power journey, we talked about performative behaviors versus presence and why they happen, how to recognize and stop these behaviors in their tracks. Then in Module 2, we talked about your most valuable asset in business. It's not your strategy. It's not how many followers you have, but it's your voice. Your voice is what makes people feel you. Your voice is what draws premium clients in, and your voice is what sells before any script does. We also looked at the tendency for smart, caring women like you to dim yourself through your voice, to make yourself smaller than you actually are, and to mute the boldest parts of you that actually make you you. And you discovered how to make the shift from a performative voice to your unfiltered, quiet power voice. So today we're moving on from the discussion of performative behaviors to talk about how you can be so grounded in your quiet power that you don't spiral into overthinking or overworking or overposting or over anything when engagement is low, when negative comments come your way, when sales are quiet, or any type of crap hits the fan. Because being embodied in your quiet power means leading yourself with unshakable certainty, even in those times when your post gets fewer likes, or a client hesitates, or someone doesn't immediately say yes to an offer, or there's a blip in engagement or interest, or you get some type of negative reaction. That is the place where your quiet power really gets tested. And where I believe it really gets formed and strengthened is during those times. So we're going to talk about how to be strong in your quiet power when we are faced with those situations in those times. It's easy to be in your certainty when you're being affirmed, right? Like when you're being validated, we can, feel really good about what we're doing. Things are going well, but it's quite another thing to be able to stand strong and actually know who you are when nobody's clapping. And your quiet power is what helps you to be able to do that, to be able to stand strong, to be able to be in your certainty no matter what's going on in your environment. So this module teaches you to stay grounded, calm, and centered no matter what's happening externally. And it literally trains your energy to sell without needing to convince anyone or hustle for the sale. So today, we're going to break what I'm calling the validation loop, which is where you need to get your validation from outside people and circumstances, and instead help you own your worth regardless of what's happening. I'm going to show you how to stay rooted in your certainty when your nervous system wants to panic, and help you to be able to not go into collapse, getting into that doubt where you're like, oh my God, like what's happening? It's not working, whenever you're not being validated. When you lead yourself and your business with this grounded, unshakable certainty, you don't compensate by reacting to every single blip in your engagement or interest. You discern the difference between silence or criticism and misalignment, which is huge. Your nervous system becomes your biggest business asset next to your unfiltered voice, that is. Your presence becomes calm, certain, and magnetic, which is great for attracting premium clients. And clients lean in because they trust your grounded energy. Quiet, grounded power equals a compelling presence. And clients trust women who trust themselves. So we want to be that woman who trusts ourselves so much and trusts our vision and our voice so much that other people are able to trust us too. Because more than anything else, that is what sells for you. It's not about having to prove or convince anyone to work with you. It's all about finding your grounded presence and self-trust, because that is what does the selling. And what also is really cool is that at this point in this journey into our quiet power, your inner power actually becomes your leadership. Like that's your leadership shining. When you can be grounded in your quiet power, when things are challenging, That's you in your leadership energy. That's when you really do shine. And as I said at the beginning, that is really what strengthens the quiet power. So we're going to talk all about this. Now, in terms of the voices, how do the voices factor into this module? The primary voice that we touch on in this module is the voice of trust. You anchor into certainty without external validation through your voice of trust. That's really your anchor. That's really what allows you to be able to do everything that we're talking about in this module today. But we're also going to hit on three of the other voices. Voice of intuition. You learn to trust your inner read more than the metrics. So this is when you have a different perception on what's going on than what the circumstances show, okay? Based on what your intuition is, how that's reading the situation for you. So it's leaning on and trusting what your intuition is telling you about that moment. Voice of self-acceptance is another one because you stay with yourself instead of judging or abandoning yourself in self-doubt, which happens all the time for women. And the last one is the voice of desire that we'll be touching on here today, because you trust your vision over the circumstances, right? So circumstances are telling you it's not working. Vision says, this is what we're doing. It's on. And so it's trusting that voice of desire that says, this is what I want. This is what I'm committed to. And yes, I'm going to see this through no matter what. So we're tapping into almost all the voices in this module, and they're all there to support that grounded, unshakable certainty in yourself, in your vision, and in your message. This is bringing me to our first key nugget: the myth and the truth about silence in the business. Silence or negativity in the business, okay? It depends on how it shows up for you. Here is the key. Your entire business, as well as how you feel about it, changes when you stop interpreting silence or no action or negative action as danger. That is the shift. So let's talk about this. Silence, when things are not happening, when the sales are not coming, or when people are like trolling you, attacking you, giving you negative comments about what you're doing, it's not a verdict on the success of your business. It's not a verdict. It is simply a mirror. It's revealing your relationship to your own authority. It shows you who you really are and how powerful you actually think and believe that you are. Most coaches collapse in that silence or in that negativity because they've never built a business from their inner authority and trust. Instead, they've built it from outside validation. Quiet power means that your validation comes from within. It comes from your vision, which is the voice of desire. It comes from your worth, which is the voice of self-acceptance. It comes from your truth, which is the voice of intuition, and really all of these. And it comes from the divine guidance that you're connected to, which is the voice of trust. And speaking of the divine guidance, here is something that spiritual and heart-centered business owners really want to embrace if you want to connect with and be rooted in your quiet power. Your business is not built only by strategy. Your business is built in partnership with the divine. And that's a piece that a lot of people pay zero attention to and then wonder why things are not working or are not working as smoothly as they'd like. And so when I say this, what I mean by this is that there are seasons when you're being repositioned. There are seasons or weeks when you're being reset or recalibrated when it comes to your business. There are moments when you're being asked to trust more deeply than ever before. And so that looks like blips in sales, dry spells, times where you feel like you're being attacked. And most women misinterpret this divine timing, this idea and concept of seasons, right? Seasons of growth and seasons where it looks like nothing's happening, right? Like in the winter, in the fall when we're planting, there are seasons in our business. And when you're grounded in your quiet power, you're able to read that silence as guidance and not rejection, or as this is just the season that I'm in right now, and not viewing it as like, oh my God, everything's crumbling. I'm not meant to do this. It's not working. And so here is the essential shift that you probably want to write this down or highlight it. I think it's in your guidebook, highlight it, make sure that this is something that you have access to see regularly when things are not working, because reading the silence as guidance is what you want to do, not you see it as rejection. So let me say that more clearly. Reading the silence as guidance, not rejection. That's what we want to make a practice of doing. Silence is guidance, it's not rejection. So that's a lovely mantra, right? Like silence is guidance, it's not rejection. Because, and here's where it gets really interesting, if it's true that silence is guidance and it's not actually rejection, then that creates different types of questions in your mind. Like, if it's true that silence is actually guidance and it's not rejection, then what is the message? What is the guidance here? That's a completely different question than why is this not working? How come this never works for me? Am I meant to do this? It's two completely different paths of questioning, and you're going to get two completely different types of answers from your intuition, from your higher self, from the divine. You get what you ask for. So when we can read the silence as guidance, we open up to a different inspiration, different creative wisdom, different answers to the problems that we're having. So it's that shift in the mindset is really the first thing we need to do when we're looking at a situation that we do not like in our business. That is pulling from your quiet power when you change your perspective like that. The truth to own, and this is really important here, is that your business is not fragile. Your calling or purpose is not fragile. Your vision is not fragile. These are not things that are like about to break at any moment. These things are solid, and that's something you can lean on and trust. If we think that our vision is so weak that a negative comment or a moment where we're not getting any sales, if we think it's so weak that makes it crumble, then it probably wasn't really the vision we wanted in the first place anyways. We have to know it's something that you want to ground yourself in, I guess is the best way to put it. The fact that these things are not weak. Anything that comes from your voices, your truth, your higher self is not based, it's not straws that are ready to crumble, right? It is strength. These things are strength. Your vision is strength, your business is strength, your calling and purpose is strength. It's power right there. So trust that and know that. The truth is that the only fragile thing that you have is believing that the success of your business is tied to external reassurance. That's the only fragile thing, that belief. And that's the good news. And that's what this entire module is going to be about, is releasing that belief that we need external validation for business success, because you don't. Now, here is where you might be thinking, if I don't have enough clients, isn't that a sign that there is external, that's showing me there's no external reassurance or validation. And so therefore, my business can't sustain, because if I don't have clients and money's not coming in, I don't have a business. And here's where I'm going to challenge you a little bit, because at the face value, you're absolutely right. I mean, and that's the practical side is, yeah, you need to have clients and make money to have a business, or you won't have a business. Having the number of clients who pay you at the rate that you want does show you a level of, that your business does rely on a level of external validation, that what you're doing has a place in the marketplace, that it is being responded by the marketplace in a positive way. Yes, you absolutely need to have that. So I'm not saying you don't need that. However, if you don't have the number of clients and income that you want, the first place you go to in your mind is not the, it's not working, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, and that all the self-doubt. That's not where you want to go. Where you want to go is looking at your own alignment before you decide something's not working. That is really, really important. And that's directly tied to your five voices. And we're going to come back to this in a little bit because we definitely need to talk about this alignment piece. This was like a major aha game changer for me when I stopped seeing every problem and every time something didn't go my way in my business, when I stopped seeing it as that something's falling apart and instead did an alignment check, that changed everything for me. So we're going to go there in a little bit. But before we do, I want to talk about the 4 patterns that steal your power. Because if you're not strong in your authentic voice, which relates to your alignment, like those 5 voices, if you're not strong there, then you're likely running one or even several of these patterns that we're going to talk about. And I've talked a lot about patterns through the first couple of modules and now this module as well. And why is that? Because if you don't recognize the patterns that are keeping you from accessing and embodying your quiet power, it's hard to make the shift into your quiet power, which makes a lot of sense, right? So I just want to be clear that it's crucial to make sure that you see when you're falling into a pattern, because that knowing that, seeing that, being conscious of that will allow you to make new decisions as you move forward. And that's the purpose of the self-reflections that I have in the guidebook. It's to help build this awareness of where you're falling into patterns that are taking you away from your power and into the self-doubt and the having to overwork and the having to burn yourself out when you don't need to. So our consciousness is what drives new decisions, because we can't choose beyond the level of identity, awareness, and truth that we currently hold. I mean, we don't make choices from willpower. Like, you really don't. You actually make choices from identity. And your consciousness is what guides you there. So we take new actions because of an upgraded inner state, and that comes from an expanded consciousness. When your awareness shifts, your decisions will shift. And when your identity expands, your actions will evolve. And so if you think about it like that, quiet power is actually an identity shift. That's really what is happening through this entire course, is we're making an identity shift. But to do that, we need to recognize the patterns that have been keeping us stuck in our current identity. So that's why I've been talking a lot about patterns and running through all these patterns with you. Please avoid the urge to not do the self-reflections, because that's where the identity shift lies. Okay. It's in the self-reflections. I would not skip those. I mean, if you need to skip some for now, that's fine, but you want to come back to them because it's going to expand your consciousness. It's going to allow you access to, I'm trying to think of a better word than next level self, but it's basically your next level self. It's going to help you see where you're keeping yourself from expanding into your next level self. And my expectation, if you listen to all of these trainings and you go through every single self-reflection, you will be shifted in your identity by the end of this program. That is my goal for everybody going through this program, is that your identity will have shifted by the time you finish the self-reflections and go through this course. And that is what is going to have you making new, better decisions that are more aligned with what you really want and what's really authentic for you. And when we start making new decisions, new things start to show up. Like, I mean, we all know that, right? It sounds so obvious, but you can't force a decision from a place you haven't expanded into yet. It's very challenging and difficult. So everything we're doing in this program is moving you gently along into the identity shift that will allow you to more easily make those decisions. So I hope that makes sense. All right. So let's get into these 4 patterns that steal your power and keep you in your current identity. So the first pattern is the validation chase. It's this loop of, did anyone like my post yet? Did it land with people? Did the client respond? Is this working? It's that constant checking to see, are you being validated? Is the stuff you're putting out there being liked? Are people responding? And then using whatever answer you get to the question of, are people liking it? Are they responding? To then dictate and regulate your emotions. Okay. So it is hard not to check. I'm constantly checking, but I'm not using it to regulate my emotion. Okay. I'm not using whatever the result is to either say, good job, Jill, like, and now I can feel good, or, oh man, like, what's going on? Like that really sucked. And what's wrong with you? And you weren't on. And I'm not doing that. And that's the key. There's no problem checking. You just don't want to use the whatever you perceive is going on to tell you how you should feel. Okay. So the reframe with the validation loop, if you notice that, oh yeah, that's me, is to know that validation is information. Like whatever's happening out there, whatever people are saying, whatever the engagement is, whether people are saying yes to your offer or no to your offer, that's just information. That is not your identity. It can guide strategy decisions, absolutely, but it cannot hold your center. It has no power over who you are. It can tell you what's landing with people, absolutely, but it should never tell you who you are. It should never, ever tell you who you are. If you need validation to feel confident and safe, what that means is you're going to pivot every time the wind shifts. Every time a post doesn't work, every time an offer flops, you're going to be constantly changing, and people can't follow that. That's too much going on. It's confusing for people, and a confused mind always says no. So we don't want you pivoting all over the place. So the reflection with this one, because each one has a self-reflection to help you see yourself more clearly in these patterns, is, where am I still using external validation to decide whether I am on the right path, instead of trusting what I already know internally? And then, what do I know to be true and right now about what I'm doing? What do I know to be true right now about what I'm doing? So take a moment. If you have your guidebook in front of you, that's great. If not, you can just do this on a piece of paper. Where am I still using external validation to decide whether I am on the right path, instead of just trusting what I know internally? And what do I know to be true right now about what I'm doing? If you're listening to the replay of this, you can pause it if you need more time. And if you're here with us live, definitely come back to this if you feel like you need some more reflection time. Okay, so just wrap up whatever thought you're on, and we're going to move on. Okay, so the second pattern is the spiral. And this is where a slow day or a bad launch becomes, oh my gosh, something's wrong. Or where a quiet week becomes, oh, I probably need a new strategy. Or where a quiet month becomes, maybe I'm not cut out for this. So every spiral leads you straight back to confusion, doubt, and overworking, because you're reacting to fear instead of leading yourself through the truth. Okay. So the reframe on this is, what is the truth? Am I reacting to fear, or am I ready to lead myself through the truth of what's going on? Because the spiral it will always take you back to the doubt. It'll always get you confused about yourself. And as I said earlier, confused mind always says no. If you're confused about what's going on, that energy is connected to your business. When we react to fear in our business, it's a huge energy drain as well. So the self-reflection with the spiral, and you know what I'm talking about, right? Like with the spiral, it's like one thing goes on, one bad thing happens and we think something negative, and then that brings in more to think about that's negative, and then more. And it's like, now you've got all this crap circling around the drain, right? That's the spiral we don't want to go in. So we bring truth to that moment. So the self-reflection here is, when things get quiet, what story do I immediately make up about the situation? And how does that story impact the actions I take next? That's the first part of it. When things get quiet, what do I do? What story do I immediately make up? And how does that story impact the actions I take next? And then the second part of that is, what new story can I tell myself that supports me through the dry spell? And what actions will I take as a result of that new story? Okay, so go ahead and reflect on that, reflecting on the story. Okay, let's wrap up whatever thought you're having there. And let's move on to the next one. So the next pattern is the premature pivot. And this is the hallmark of someone who is not strong in their voice of self-trust. And what it looks like is, whether it's your message, whether it's your offers, whether it's your pricing, or it's just your voice in general, if you don't feel really strong in expressing your voice, the minute there's something looks wrong, you want to change it. You want to change your message. You want to change the offer. You want to change the pricing. You want to change like what you're sharing, how you're approaching your business. Any of that is a premature pivot. If you're thinking of changing something just because one thing goes wrong, pivoting on its own is not wrong. I've pivoted. I've definitely had made many pivots in my business, but pivoting out of fear destroys your momentum. So if you're someone who wants to pivot the minute anything goes wrong, here's the reframe for you. Your voice of desire, your voice of intuition, and your voice of trust teach you to stay with the thing that you know is meant for you, even before the results show up. It's staying with what's aligned for you. That's what we need to practice. That's the muscle that needs to get stronger, is making the alignment piece, which we're going to get to in a minute, but making your inner knowing stronger than what you're seeing on the outside. There is nothing stronger than trusting yourself when it comes to building a business that you love. Like, that is the most important thing, in my opinion. So in terms of the self-reflection for this one, where do I abandon my message, my offer, or my voice the moment discomfort arises? Where do I abandon my message, my offer, or my voice the moment discomfort arises? And what am I actually afraid will happen if I stay the course? And the other question is, am I still aligned with my message or my vision or my offer? And whatever the thing is that you're considering pivoting, do I still feel strongly about it? Do I still like it? Is this still the message I feel good about, for example? Because if you are saying yes to that question, then that's where you want to double down. Not by forcing it, not by pushing it, but by simply asking better questions. So I'll be quiet for a minute and let you reflect on those questions? Okay, so just wrap up the current thought that you're on. We'll move on to the last one. So the last pattern is the not enoughness loop. And this pattern shows up when you believe that your power is something that you have to earn instead of something that you already carry. So it might sound like, I need another certification, or I need a new strategy, or I need another coach to tell me what to do, or I need to fix something before I show up again. This pattern tricks you into thinking that you're still preparing, right? You're still not ready, but really you're delaying your own leadership. And so, not enoughness is the quiet lie that keeps way too many brilliant women small. It's why you hesitate. It's why you hide. It's why you keep handing your authority to someone else or something else. And so, if this one sounds like something that's very familiar to you, here's your reframe. Nothing steals your power faster than believing that you need something outside of yourself to be ready. I mean, that is the biggest power drain there is thinking that you're not enough, right? That you weren't equipped with everything you need when you came here, that your purpose requires something that you don't have. The more you think that you're missing something, the more you disconnect from the identity that creates premium clients for your purpose-based business. Okay. So the not enoughness isn't something that's going to lead you to the success that you want. And in fact, it leaks you. It leaks you your power and your energy being in the not enoughness. So the reflection, if this one is familiar to you, is what do I keep telling myself I need more of before I can finally lead from my power? And who would I become if I stopped waiting and just stepped into my power now? What decision would I make right now from that new place? Go ahead and jot your thoughts on that. Okay, so wrap up your thought there. And is anyone interested in sharing any ahas that you had as we walked through those four patterns? Don't feel like you need to share, but if anything, something really struck you and you want to voice it now, just go ahead and unmute yourself. If not, we'll move on.
I can share quickly if you want. Quick
Okay,
one is,
great.
yeah, they're all really great reflections and they lead to more, and I can tell I'm going to spend more time on them too.
Great.
One part that really made me smile was in the first one of the first ones on the What new story can I tell myself about the things getting quiet? And so right away it was the silence is guidance mantra came in. So it's like, yes, I have a mantra to put here. So that was really helpful because immediately that was there and just enjoying the spaciousness and asking deeper questions and exploring that versus shrinking and wondering what's wrong. So
Yeah.
um, that one really stood out. So thank you for the mantra and all the other reflections too.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And when you said that, I could really feel the energy of what we normally do is that because even like your shoulders went down, like we
Hmm.
kind of collapse in, we shrink, we contract. When
Hmm.
really in that moment, it's the opportunity to expand, right? It's when you mentioned the word
Yeah.
spaciousness. But it's opposite of what we think. So it's remembering that, it's no, I'm expanding in this quiet. Like I get to expand in this quiet, which is really cool. So thanks for sharing that. Awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So those are the four patterns that I see most often that steal power. And just to quickly recap them again, it's pattern number one is the validation chase. So this is where we're constantly looking outward for validation. Pattern number two is the spiral, where if you don't see it happening right away, you've got that collapse inward spiral, like downward spiral, right, of negativity. The pattern three is the premature pivot. This is where you kind of assume I must be doing it wrong. So you redirect yourself outward by making a change, pivoting yet again. And pattern number four is the not enoughness loop, where you conclude you must be the problem. Like there's something that is not enough with you, and you've got to like add things onto yourself. These are the four patterns that represent the cycle that creates women who overwork, creates women who undercharge, it creates women who do like insecure selling, they struggle to sell, women who are inconsistent or unclear in their messaging, and burnout. Like these are the patterns that really lead to that because they're leaking your power, which means they're leaking your energy, which means everything starts to collapse. So, how do you move out of the patterns that steal your power? And how do you move into the unshakable certainty that we've been talking about? Well, first of all, we need the awareness, which is what I mentioned earlier. So, the self reflections are going to bring you to that awareness of what you're actually doing now. And then, what really helps you cross the bridge is rootedness. So, what do I mean by rootedness? Rootedness is the capacity to stand in your truth, stand in your vision, and in your divine assignment without needing proof that it's working. And that last part is the key without needing proof that it's working. Because we're pretty good at standing in a vision and standing in a truth when we have people validating us, right? Like that's not hard. But can you do it when it's not clear it's working? And we see this in nature all the time. I mean, the word rooted, right? It's the roots growing down. You can't see that a plant is growing before it comes above the soil. You have no way to know. You don't know if the roots are going down. The only way you could really know is if you dug down there and dug it up and destroyed it. Um, so there's a level of trust. Like we have to trust that if I plant this seed in the soil, if I take care of the soil, if I water it, if there's sunlight, that thing is going to grow. And it does. It does. And it takes time. So rootedness is that level of trust. And this is where the voice of trust comes into play. A woman who owns her power is rootedness is a big part of it. She's able to root herself in her vision, in her divine connection, in her purpose, and in her voice. She has the ability to trust that it's not always going to be instant validation, and that is not a reflection on the truth of what she wants, what she sees for herself, and what she knows to be true. And rootedness is the hallmark of the grounded woman archetype. This is a woman who owns her power when she's not being validated. And that, like, she's grounded. Like, grounded's another good word for it. Grounded, rootedness. That's what we're talking about here. So the grounded woman archetype, she doesn't rush. She doesn't flail about. She doesn't chase. She's not, chasing clients around. She doesn't react to things. She simply responds. She waits and she responds, and she trusts her timing, and she trusts her calling, and she trusts her voice, and she trusts the divine architecture that is moving her forward. She knows that it is. She trusts that it is. And this is what it looks like to embody quiet power. The grounded woman is basically what quiet power is all about. Rootedness breaks that power leak loop that those four patterns represent. And it opens the doorway to fully embody your quiet power. So it's about finding that rootedness within ourselves. So what I want to do now is do a short grounding practice to help you find your rootedness within. So this is a great practice to do on a daily basis, or to do whenever you feel yourself kind of flailing about, thinking, spiraling, falling into any one of those patterns. This is a great practice to do. It's really short, it's really simple, and I think it's really powerful. So let's go ahead and practice this together. Just sit tall in your seat and have your feet flat on the floor. You can put your hands down on your thighs and just get comfortable in your chair. And then go ahead and take an inhale, and feel free to close your eyes if you like. And imagine as you inhale that your power is rising. It's rising up from the earth through the soles of your feet, moving into your legs, into your body. And as you exhale, imagine any doubt, any second guessing, any fear just falling away. Let's do that a couple more times, just inhaling in your power, the power that is rightly yours, divinely provided. And exhaling out the questioning, the uncertainty, the confusion. And again, breathing in, feeling that authentic power that is always there for you, and all the energy that it brings with it. And exhaling any remaining lack of clarity, frustration, just letting it all fall away. Letting power take its place. And now on your next breath, say internally to yourself, my vision leads me, not validation, not circumstances. My vision leads me, not validation and not circumstances, but my vision. And sit with that. And on your next breath, say internally, I trust myself. I trust the divine timing of my business. I trust myself. I trust the divine timing of my business. And feel into that. And then take another breath or two and say internally, it is working. Everything is adding up for me now. I am expanding. My business is expanding. I am supported. Divine is my partner and my guide. Every step I take is moving me in the right direction. I am right where I need and am meant to be. And just breathe that in. It is working. Everything is adding up for me. I am expanding. My business is expanding. I am supported. Divine is my partner and my guide. Every step I take is moving me in the right direction. I am where I need and am meant to be. Breathe that in and sit with that. Sit with that knowing. Feeling your connection to the earth, feeling your connection to the divine, trusting in yourself and your own knowing about what is best and right for you. And feel free to come back into our space here, open your eyes and shake it out if you need to, move a little bit. So that was a short, very simple practice that can help to create that rootedness in you each day or whenever you notice yourself falling into one of those patterns, like I said. And I have to say that that last little bit that I said, the is working, everything is adding up for me now, that piece has helped me immensely through crazy times, like crazy times in my business where I doubted, where I questioned things. That's been the passage that just brings me back. I say my own version of it. Sometimes I change the words, and I, definitely invite you to do that as well. But it moves something in me back to trusting myself and back to trusting source that no, this is right. This is for me. And so again, like I said with the self-reflections, don't underestimate the power of that. I am not a big fan of affirmations in general because if you're not bought into what you're saying, it's hard to get the subconscious to accept it. But for some reason, there is something about this that moves me out of the spin and out of the spiral and into my knowing, back into my knowing. So play with it yourself, try it out, see how it can support you and your groundedness and your rootedness in what is true and authentic for you. Okay, take a breath. Now, remember earlier when I mentioned that, and I have this question too, so we're going to talk about this, that if you're not seeing on the outside signs that your business is working, meaning clients aren't coming in, people aren't paying you, if that kind of thing is happening, if you're not able to sustain your business financially because you're just not bringing enough in, isn't that a sign that something's wrong and that something should pivot and that we need to react to that, right? Like, wouldn't that be a smart business move? And as I said, that can definitely be a sign from the marketplace that something needs to be tweaked. Absolutely. 100%. I'm not going to argue with that. However, and this is the important thing, and this is what the grounded woman archetype would do, and this is what coming from your quiet power would have you do, is before you knee jerk your way there and go there in your mind and start making decisions, right? It's that reactiveness, that impulsive need to fix or change or see it as wrong or bad. The first place you want to look is at your own alignment. We need to check our own alignment first. Because remember that silence is guidance, right? As you said, that silence is guidance. So if we knee jerk our way into changing things, we're not getting the guidance. that could help us. So what can get us the guidance is checking our alignment. Your alignment is tied to your 5 voices. The 5 voices will tell you if you're in alignment or not. It's very, very simple. Holding your power in your business, what that really means when we're talking about rootedness is being rooted in your vision, which comes from your voice of desire. It means being rooted in your purpose and your message, which comes from your voice of desire and your voice of intuition. It means being rooted in your value and worth. That comes from your voice of self-acceptance. It means being rooted in your inner knowing, which is your voice of intuition and your voice of trust. And it comes from being rooted in your right to take up space. That is your right. You're here. You get to take up space. That comes from your voice of self-acceptance and your voice of trust. And it comes from being rooted in your right to receive. That comes from your voice of money. You have the right to receive from the work that you do. You have that right. You actually have a duty to receive from the work that you do, but that's a separate topic. So there's a self-reflection in your guidebook. I think it's titled, How Grounded Are You in Your 5 Voices? This is one of the most powerful check-ins for you to do around your business to check your alignment with what you're doing. And I recommend doing this self-reflection regularly in a business to make sure that you're always moving forward in alignment with your voices. And I also recommend doing it when it looks like it's not working, when the clients are coming in. This is where you want to go. Yes, the grounding meditation that we did, and this check here. So I'm just going to run through this really quickly. We're not going to do this self-reflection now, but definitely come back to it for, with any doubt you have, because this is what's going to help you make the right decisions in your business from a place of quiet power and not from a place of reaction and premature pivoting and all of those patterns that we talked about. Okay. So the 5 questions are, first one, voice of desire. Are you actually running the business you desire? You'd be surprised how many people aren't so sure when they think about that question. Okay. If you aren't madly in love with the business you're running, then it's not surprising that clients aren't coming in. Like, that would make sense, right? But how often do we stop and take a step back and actually check in on that question? When I started my parenting business, I was uber passionate about it. But ironically, when the clients stopped coming and the sales tapered off, my first thought was, is this still in alignment for me? And when I actually asked myself that question, I realized it wasn't. I realized that I wasn't really into talking about parenting things now that my son is in high school. It didn't light me up in the same way as it used to. So that's when I made a pivot, but that was a pivot based on, I am misaligned here. So I need to change that now. Okay. So you see how just even that one question can give you powerful guidance, and it's not a reaction. It's a response to your truth, a response to your truth. That's quiet power. Okay. Second question, voice of intuition. Are you making decisions that include your intuition? You don't want your intuition to take off and run with your business without getting other forms of information as well, because a business does require more than just intuition, but it requires intuition. And many people run their business strictly on metrics and strategies, and they're not even bringing their intuition into the conversation at all. So it's a check to make sure that is coming into play. Are you discounting that quiet voice on the inside and listening to what some supposed expert says you should do? Or are you taking that into account when you make your decisions? Voice of self-acceptance. Are you avoiding doing certain things in your business due to a lack of believing in your value, your worth, or your ability to fully accept yourself? Or is this belief that you lack these things driving your decisions now? You don't think you're worthy enough to do this, so you're not going to, do the keynote, for example, right? So how much is a lack in seeing your true worth, in believing in the value of what you offer, how much is that driving decisions in your business? Because it's possible that things have slowed down because there's something you're not stepping into because you're not strong in your own worth and value, or you're not raising the price because of that. And now suddenly your expenses are going up and you can't cover them. I mean, the voice of self-acceptance, do we have alignment with our true value and worth? Is that reflected in the business? I mean, my clients know that periodically I must raise my rates to be in alignment with myself. It's a feeling of discomfort. Like it's not like physical pain, but that's kind of how I want to describe it. But it's not actually physical pain, but it's such a discomfort to me when I realize like it's not matching anymore. It's not matching who I now know I am. And that's when I raise my prices. And you should do the same thing. Like I highly recommend it. You want to be in alignment with your truth, with your identity, with who you are. Okay. Next one, voice of trust. Do you trust that you will be okay if you are wildly successful? Do you trust you will be safe? Many, many women do not. They have a fear that if they get the kind of success that they want, that somehow that makes them vulnerable. So that can subconsciously push clients and money away if you somehow see that as a threat. Okay, so that's a good alignment check. And here's another one in voice of trust. Do you trust that you are in fact in divine partnership with source and that all is well? You know, we forget when we feel threatened by our success, we forget that, wait a minute, I'm in divine partnership with God. I am safe in that partnership. So that's a voice of trust. And then the last one, the voice of money, checking for your alignment there. Is your business designed, and this is really important, is your business designed to allow in the number of clients and money that you desire? And I see a lot of coaches be misaligned here because they are seeing people privately and they haven't raised their prices in eons and they have no more bandwidth to see clients. And so their money is stuck. They're trapped. They're exhausted seeing the clients. Their money's not changing, but you know, everything else costs more. They don't have so they're actually losing buying power. You want to make sure your business is set up to support the lifestyle and the dreams that you have. And so a lot of times it's a tweak in how you're offering your services or what you charge for them that needs to be looked at. And that's the reason why it feels like things are quiet or things aren't working. Okay. So those 5 areas are the alignment check. That's the alignment check when things feel slow, when something doesn't seem to be working, when you're starting to question or doubt yourself or your business, is to check in with your 5 voices using those questions. Okay. So I hope you see how really powerful those questions can be. So if you want to do those questions now and you're listening to the replay, you can go ahead and hit pause and come back to this when you're done. But we're going to move on to our next part here, getting close to the end. A couple more things I want to cover with you guys. All right. So quiet power, I mentioned at the beginning that in this module, we lean heavily onto 4 of the 5 voices. Like they are really supporting us developing this unshakable certainty in ourselves and our business. But primarily your whole quiet power, it's primarily based on your voice of trust, because trust flows through all the voices, right? We have to trust ourselves through all those voices. So the voice of trust is the one that says, I know who I am. I know what I'm here to do. I know I'm supported by source. I know this is working even when I can't see it yet. Your voice of trust is a nervous system voice. It's a leadership voice. It's your inner certainty. It's a divine voice, and it's the antidote for needing outside validation. If you were fully rooted in your voice of trust, you would not need outer validation to tell you if you're good or not. You just wouldn't, because you would know that you are, because you would trust that you are. You would trust that you're worthy enough. You would trust that that inner knowing is guiding you down the right path. You would trust that your desires and your vision are meant for you. You would trust that your purpose is good enough. You would trust that your mission's good enough. You would trust that your message is good enough. You would trust that you are good enough to receive for the work that you do. So the voice of trust is such a powerful partner for you in this piece about being in your certainty and not needing that outer validation. When you're rooted in your self-trust, your power actually grows rather than diminishes when things go awry. Your power actually grows. You actually become stronger. And this is exactly where the certainty comes from. We never want to think about being in adversity, right? Like we want everything to feel easy and flowy and nice all the time. But that is not reality. That is not reality. However, when you're rooted in your trust, you are getting your power from somewhere else. You're actually bolstered in power. If you allow that to come in, we talked about earlier, like the tendency for us to want to shrink and contract, and even like our shoulders come down and our energy, we kind of ball our energy up. When you're rooted in your voice of self-trust and you lean into your trust, you suddenly become very big. You suddenly become very powerful, because trust is your connection to God. I mean, all of it is, but like you're bringing in your divine partner here to support you. And it's really, really powerful. And this is where surrender comes in, because a lot of voice of trust is about surrendering and letting something bigger step in and support you. And so that's why you get stronger, because you've got extra support there with you. You get more energetic because that extra energy, you're inviting it in. So in these times where someone's attacking you, no one's buying, it's leaning into the trust in yourself, in your vision, in your voice, in God, that will carry you through, and it actually gives you more energy, and it actually gives you more power. Here are some questions that you can lean on when you go into that little adversity place, right? That we never want to be in. First question, am I in alignment with what I'm doing? So that relates to those alignment questions I already shared. Am I taking actions that allow my vision to flourish? Okay, so that's a little bit of a slightly different question, something to consider, right? Am I actually taking the actions that would get me there? Am I listening to myself and acting on what I know now, even if I don't have every piece of it? Am I doing what I can right now? Am I following that trail? One of the things, this is a big mistake I see a lot of women do, a lot of people I coach do this, and this is something to be aware of, is that there's this tendency to, if I can't see the whole picture, I need more clarity, and so I can't do anything. And I am here to tell you that you probably aren't going to get the whole picture until you take the step that you do know now. There's always one thing that if we tune in and we listen, that we know right now. There's always at least one thing. And I've seen people not, like, over and over tell me the one thing, but not step into the one thing, and wonder why there more isn't coming. And the more isn't coming because you're not stepping into the first thing that you're being given. And I don't like to think that the universe challenges us, but in a way, it's kind of like a challenge. It's like, well, are you going to trust this step I'm giving you? Because if you're not, why am I going to give you all the other steps, right? That's kind of what it feels like anyways, energetically. So we do need to trust it. And the analogy I always use about this is with the GPS. When you plugged in your GPS and it tells you, go to the end of the road and make a left. if you never do that, you don't get the next step in the GPS, right? Like you actually have to move the car and then it starts now, make a right. We've got to take that first step. So that's a really good question. If you're wondering, like, why are things not happening? Are you doing the one thing you know you can do right now? What could you tell yourself instead of there's something wrong when your business is quiet or when someone has a negative comment? And we talked about that. That was one of the reflections. And lastly, what would shift for me if I trusted that nothing was going wrong in my business, even when it was quiet? So, what if I took that a step further, right? Instead of what would I tell myself if I didn't tell myself something was wrong? What if I just trusted that nothing was wrong? What if I knew in my heart of hearts that there's nothing wrong, but this is guidance and let's see what it is? What am I meant to do here in this moment of silence and spaciousness? Okay. So these questions I just shared, they work alongside the questions in the previous self-reflection where you check in for alignment. So lots of questions in here to help you stay rooted, to get grounded, to stay in your certainty when things don't look like they're working, because many times things will not look like they're working. And look, I've been doing this for 18 years. Can I tell you how many times it looked like things were not working in both iterations of my business? Yeah. Double down. If you're aligned, if you're still aligned, double down. Where you're not aligned, that's where you make a pivot. Okay. And I just shared this with someone, I think it was yesterday, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so glad you said that," because it's important. And I like, who knows how true this is or not, but it's a very helpful thing to lean on when you need to. Edison and the light bulb. If he would have stopped at the what was it, like 9,999th try to figure out how to create the light bulb, I think I'd be burning candles right now talking to you. I probably wouldn't even be talking. I wouldn't be talking to you on a PC right now, right? But he was aligned. He was still aligned with this idea of, I'm going to create electricity. Like, I know there's a way to do this. I'm going to do it. So he was still aligned. As long as you're still aligned, there is a path forward. There is a path forward. So keep that in mind. Think about the 9,999 times. Hopefully it doesn't take you that many times. All right. So if you are still aligned, like you check in with yourself, you do those questions, you go through the other questions I just shared, right? So you're checking for your alignment, you're making sure you're doing the actions, you're making sure you're listening to yourself and doing the one thing that you know you actually could do right now. If you're doing all those things, you're like, yep, I'm doing that. Oh, I'm doing that, Jill. Yeah, I'm doing it all. Like, I'm doing all these things. Then you want to double down on that affirmation I shared earlier, which is, it is working. Everything I'm doing is adding up. It's all leading to where I want to go. And affirm that until you feel it. Affirm it until you feel it. It helps me a ton when I do that. When I know I'm doing everything that I can, and I affirm back to myself that in the form of those, like putting those words together, I feel much, much better. And then usually what happens when I do that is I get some crazy download about that'll be my next step, right? Like something comes to me and I'm like, oh, yes. And then I move forward. Okay. So, real world application. How do you hold your power practically in a business setting? Okay, I want to share a few don'ts and a couple of do's with you right now. If things are challenging, here are your don'ts. Avoid changing your message. This is a big mistake that a lot of women coaches make. They want to change their message. They keep wanting to change their message when they actually know that it's the right message, right? But they let the doubt come in, so they let the confusion come in. So they're like, well, let me try this other thing. I've seen this so much. The problem with changing your message kind of willy-nilly like that is that repetition is what actually creates resonance for your ideal client. We have to repeat things over and over and over and over before we pick up steam. Like very clear, very concise, over. Like it gets, we're kind of like, aren't people going to get bored hearing this? No, they're not. Because there's so much noise out there. And the person who is clear and keeps coming with the same message over and over and over, that is what creates the resonance and the momentum toward you. So if you keep wanting to change your message all the time, you're not building up that momentum. You're not gaining the traction, and the energy is not growing towards that message. So resist that urge to change your message every time something doesn't seem like it's working. Another don't is resist the urge to downgrade your prices. Silence is never a pricing signal. It's rarely, if ever, about your prices. It's usually about you not owning your price. Okay. It's usually a lot more about that. It's a place to get clear on your alignment. It is an invitation to get clear on your alignment with your pricing. That's a totally different conversation. But it's not that the marketplace won't accept your prices, because I have seen all, and I'm sure you have too, all over the board, different prices for all types of different offerings. It's obviously, if there was a price that the market wouldn't accept, you wouldn't see that. You wouldn't see pricing all over the place in the coaching industry. Number 3, do not use the lack of validation as a reason to work harder. Okay. Like, don't we have that beat into us? You got to work hard. You're not working hard enough. You better do more. You better produce more. You're not going hard enough at it. No, we're not playing that game anymore. It's not about working harder. It is about alignment to your truth, which sometimes can feel hard. Okay. So it's not about everything's fluffy and easy all the time, but it's about being aligned with your truth. We talked about that a lot today. And then the fourth don't is do not, this is similar to like the changing your message, do not rebrand yourself, and do not change your offer. Don't rebrand, don't. We have to try things a lot more than people seem to be willing to try before concluding that it doesn't work. There's usually so many other reasons why it's not working before it's your brand or your offer or your pricing or your message. And usually what it is related to everything we've talked about today. It's about you not owning your certainty, you not owning your vision, your truth, what you know is right for you, what you know your purpose is. It's 99% of the time, it's going to come from there. It's going to come from that piece right there. That's why, going back to what I said about the thing about, well, yeah, Jill, if clients aren't coming in and I'm not making the money, isn't that a sign that the marketplace isn't buying it? No. There's maybe a 1% chance that that's what's going on, but there's a 99% chance that there's something internal in you that is where we need to work and what we need to look at. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense, because hopefully this is clicking for you. Now, the do's, there's two do's. The first one is hold the vision, not the fear. Because when that kind of stuff happens that we don't like in a business, the tendency is you go to the fear, like you grab onto the fear. We hold the fear. I'm going to let go of the fear, and we're going to grab on to the vision. We're going to grab onto the vision. It's like if someone, I remember getting this metaphor, and I love this metaphor. If someone, like, they like put your hand out, and you put your hand out, and they put a hot coal, burning hot coal on your hand, what are you going to do? Are you going to clutch it, or are you going to drop it? You're going to drop it so fast, right? Oh, that hurt. Why don't we do that with fear? Why do we grab onto it and side with it and agree with it and take it in to us? Why do we allow that to happen? It's just like a hot coal. It's painful. Fear thoughts are painful. So when something's going off like that, No, we're going to drop the fear like a hot potato. Those fear thoughts, dropping it like a hot potato, doubling down on the vision and using the things I've given you here today to help get you back in alignment, to help check your alignment and get you back in alignment. So that's the first do. Hold the vision, not the fear. And then the second do is, and this is important, this is like the seedling growing up, trust momentum that you can't see. Or for those of us who have had babies, before you're showing, we trust that it's growing, right? We trust that something's happening in there. Think about back in the day when they didn't have ultrasounds. The women didn't know. They just had to trust. They used their feminine intuition, right? And they trusted. And they're knowing that something's going on in there and it's something beautiful. So we want to trust the momentum that you can't see. That is so important. That's what Voice of Trust is all about. That is what quiet power is all about. Is not like giving up your power just because you can't see what you want. It's leaning into your power, knowing and trusting. On that point, I need to say this because this is really, really important. This has actually helped me a lot. Just because clients are not commenting, liking, or showing up does not mean they're not watching. And I have learned that to be 100% fact. In fact, when you are hitting on your message and your truth, and you're speaking directly to your ideal clients, and you're not trying to speak to fans and create engagement, what I have seen to be true and to happen is the types of engagement you will get on your social media is not coming from your ideal clients. They're the quiet ones. They're the ones that are lurking behind the scenes and they're watching and they're deciding. Okay. You are being watched by, that sounds kind of creepy, but you're being watched by a lot more people than you know. Your ideal clients are leaning into you, whether you know that or not. That's the seedling below the soil that's growing. We have to trust that if we're aligned with what we're doing. And just because they're not buying yet, this is another big one, doesn't mean they won't. I can't tell you the number of times that I have had someone on my list for like 5 years, and suddenly I get an email and they're like, yeah, I want to talk about coaching with you, Jill. Or they come up out of nowhere and they buy some offer that I made when I knew they were sitting on there for a long, long time doing nothing. Just because they're not buying now doesn't mean they never will. We do need to trust their timing and their seasons as well. Trust that the right people are seeing you. Trust the divine timing of your ideal client. All right. So wrapping up here today, the homework is to reflect on there's two steps. First step is, what am I afraid is going on when it looks like it's not working? Okay, that's a powerful question. Second one, what has my fear made me do that hasn't helped? That's a really good question too. And then the third one, what do I know to be true about my calling, even without evidence of it showing up yet? Okay. So reflect on those three questions. And then the second step is to complete this sentence. When things are quiet, I choose to what? Based on everything you've learned today. Because the moment you choose to hold your big self in the quiet is the moment that you become unshakable. It is about holding yourself, trusting yourself, and shooing away, dropping the self-doubt. That's your quiet power in action. Okay. So quiet power, as we're closing up here, and then I'll see if anyone has questions since we've got you guys live today. Quiet power is not about eliminating the circumstances that you don't like. That's not what we're talking about. That's not the goal here. It's about mastering who you become inside of them, inside of those challenges. When you no longer need applause or validation to trust your path, when you no longer need evidence to trust your voice, when you no longer need constant engagement to trust your impact, that's when your presence sells for you. That's when your authority feels undeniable. That is when clients feel you and they lean in without you having to chase. Because your certainty is the best conversion strategy. When you are certain, your clients feel it, they lean in, and they trust it. So hold yourself in the quiet. The quiet is where powerful leaders just like you rise. Okay, so that is how to be unshakable when things aren't working or they look like they're not working. So, what questions can I answer for you? If you want to unmute or any comments, anything you want to share, anything that you aren't sure about, just feel free to hop on.
Yeah, I don't have any questions specifically, but yeah, this is fantastic. This is such an empowering set of questions and reflections. And I can think back on times when my past business was really going, and yeah, I had that unshakable knowing and trust and those things that were there. So I felt it before, and that's actually very helpful in the next phase of life of asking the questions and tying back to that. Like, yeah, here's a time when I really knew it, what's different, what's not. So, yeah, these are incredibly powerful, really great, and just that reminder that we have that inner strength within us to do anything. So,
Yeah,
yeah, and not relying on outside sources. It all comes from within. So, yeah,
right,
thank you for
right.
all of this. It's very, very empowering and perfect example of quiet power. It's
Yeah,
good.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because with trust, like it's kind of an abstract thing. Like it's like how do you teach trust to someone, right? And it's kind of like how do you teach someone to ride a bike? It's because riding a bike is how that happens is you find your internal balance. You really can't teach someone to ride a bike. You can tell them mechanically, but you cannot teach someone to find their internal balance on a bicycle. It's impossible. They have to do it. They have to get on the bike and they have to do it until they feel it. And that's kind of what strengthening your self-trust is about. It's practicing it with yourself. And like I said when I was talking earlier, you don't get to practice when things are going well because there's nothing to trust because it's going well, you know? So we need the challenging times to allow us to practice that trust. Okay. So if you look at it from that perspective, it's like welcoming when things are challenging, right? Because that's when I get to practice building my self-trust, which is deeply connected to my quiet power. So it's a good thing. It's an expansive thing. It allows you to grow. Yeah. So everything I've given you is kind of like the mechanics of riding a bike, right? Okay. But you got to practice it in a live situation to build your self-trust. Okay. Because I can sit there and tell you, trust yourself, right? And those are just words. It's until you actually question yourself on some of this stuff, lean into it a little bit, apply it to your work or, I mean, your life, because all of this stuff, it applies equally to life and life's challenges. So have fun with it, practice it, and I'm sure we'll have opportunities to support you with it as we move forward. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time for Quiet Power Module 4 and enjoy the self reflections and be well. Talk to you soon. Bye.